Well, very happy Friday to anybody that's listening live, and very happy whatever day it may be to those listening to replay. It's a great pleasure to introduce Tony to everyone today from Cosmos Currency Exchange. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with Tony today because we've met a couple of times, but every time that you have a conversation with someone, you find out something fascinating about them and their journey and their life in business. So a big welcome, Tony.
Thank you very much, Louise. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're hoping that the IT is going to be okay today. I've already had a few issues. It's a bit of a common
Yes.
theme, isn't it, with all of these chats? I'm either complaining about my hair, the IT, both. It's kind
You
of
had to go and
like,
show off about a hair, didn't you? You had to go and mention hair, didn't you? Honestly.
oh well,
Not a problem I've had for about 30 years, but never mind, it's okay.
That's right, Tony. You're looking absolutely fabulous.
Oh,
So
thank you. I did do a special parting for you this morning, yes.
nice. Well, I'm always grateful for that. Thank you so much. So if people are listening live, they just drop in your name, let us know where you're listening from. And also if you've got any questions, or comments, just drop them into the comments below. Also, if you've got any comments that if you're listening on replay or questions for Tony or for myself, we'll come back and answer those as well. So anything that comes to mind, drop it in the comment box and we will get an answer to you. So enough about me wibbling on about my IT issues. It's going to be over to you, Tony. And what would be really interesting is to find out a bit more about you and your business. Now, I know that you launched Cosmos Currency Exchange in 2020, a year that lots of other businesses were closing their businesses. So it'd be really interesting to hear about that. But before then, I find it fascinating to just hear about people's journey, what led them to doing, what they're doing today, and particularly any kind of turning points or any kind of key learnings along the way. It's just really interesting to understand a little bit more about you and how you came to be Cosmos Currency Exchange. So we'll come to your name, Cosmos, I'm sure at some point. But I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to hand over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Louise. My whole 37-year career has been in finance. Started off in the City of London. Got a very lucky break right at the beginning of the career because before 1985, it was pretty much a closed shop. You had to know somebody inside to be invited in, and we certainly didn't. And then the second Thatcher government did what the media called Big Bang in the City of London, liberalisation of financial services, and hundreds of banks flooded in from all four corners of the globe, and they needed staff. And maths is always my favourite subject at school, math, science and history. Bit of a weird combination, but there you go. And so I thought, well, finance at least, it pays well. I can work here, I can work abroad, I can work for myself, I can work for others. Got lots of flexibility. So that was my career decision. And it was certainly never my intention of foreign exchange per se. I actually specialised in property finance. And I fell into foreign exchange in the 1990s when my hardcore of clients started to become wealthier and would tend to move down a certain journey, and they all kind of like followed similar paths of moving to a detached house and kids going to private school and nicer badged cars in the driveway, and then the next step usually involved, at that time at least, buying holiday homes abroad. And Portugal has been a perennial favourite with the British. It is the oldest political alliance in the world, dating back to the 13th century. And I'm Portuguese by birth and bilingual. So I would inevitably get asked, do I know a solicitor and estate agent? What's a good area for golf and what's a good area for this and all the rest of it? And to be frank, by the time it actually came to them buying the property, I had been so involved in the project that they would inevitably turn around and say, Tony, would you mind, where do I go for the currency exchange? Or can you do it for me? Yeah, just do it, Tony. Just do it. Okay. And I had a theoretical knowledge at the time from my banking studies. I'd never actually worked in foreign exchange, but Yeah, I learnt, and luckily it was just in time because this was like mid 1990s, and then of course the euro came in '99,
Hmm.
and there was a very strong feeling, at least amongst the people that worked in finance, that an introduction of a new currency or a currency reset is always inflationary. So it was pretty obvious what was going to happen in terms of prices. And so I suggested a few things to a few clients who ended up making quite a lot of money when the euro was introduced.
Very good.
I then worked on my own account for a while. So day was now called day trading. And then came back to the UK in 2006 and been looking for an opportunity to set up on my own pretty much ever since. Got quite a lot of day-to-day working experience between 2006 2020, working for brokers who specialize in different parts. Some are general brokers, some kind of like more specialist within international property field, which again something I was quite familiar with. What led me to start a business in the middle of the lockdown? I saw a gap in the market. Simple. And the gap in the market is that when I look back at how I started in 1985, there was no computers, there was no internet. For the older listeners, you might remember things called microfiches. That was the height of technology back then. And a fax machine. Fax machine
Yes.
and microfiches. That was the cutting edge technology at the time. But joking aside, the only way to do business in those times was the only way business had been done for years, and that's talking to people and visiting clients in their premises, and the clients coming in and discussing things, possibly some form filling to fill in. That was it. And certainly in the last 20 years, most financial services, but especially foreign exchange, has moved 180 degrees away from relationship-based business models, and it's all transactional now. It's all about the technology. It's all about the algorithm. It's all about the app. And I'm no technophobe. I couldn't do my job without the latest technology. But there's a difference in psychology between treating it, in my opinion anyway, between treating it as a god and treating it as a tool.
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? And we were talking before we're live about technology and the fact that we both use it, and it's great when it's working well. There's obviously issues when it doesn't, but actually, it is a fantastic tool. It's allowing us to talk here today and to reach people all around the world. But there are so many cases where technology has really taken over that human to human relationship. And in many businesses, with the move to be more streamlined, to give fast service, we all want things instantly. We have moved away from that sort of interacting with our clients that way. And it's interesting you were saying, about that relationship. I mean, with the people that you obviously support. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I look after a whole range of clients, Louise, from from individuals to charities to businesses of all shapes and sizes. It can be sole traders, partnerships, charities to limited companies. And where Cosmos comes in is if any client has a requirement to move funds from one bank account to another bank account involving an exchange of currency, then you've got a number of options as to who sits in the middle and does it for you. Most people will go to the banks because that's the obvious choice. Nowadays, there are other choices. There are the mainstream brokers. There are apps. There are plenty of apps. But they all share one thing in common, and that is a reactive business model. So that the client is responsible for initiating the contact. So the client, you've got a bill to pay for whatever reason, big, small, it doesn't matter. You've got a bill to pay. The client has to contact the provider. Now, whether they do that by an app or online banking or a platform or walking into a branch, they're just technicalities, they're just choices. The trouble with that approach is very simple. Exchange rates in the wholesale money markets change every 3 seconds, night and day.
Wow, yeah.
28,800 changes every 24 hours. So what most people would do is think, oh, I must pay this bill Friday, right? Friday, I must pay this bill. So you ring the or you make contact with the provider Friday afternoon. That might suit you, but it might not even be the right time in that hour to do that trade. Never mind day or week. So the premise behind Cosmos is very simple. We use the latest technology, but on a totally proactive, relationship-based business model. So every client gets a free of charge discovery session. And then we take the time there to find out about the client, what they're looking at doing, the time frame they're looking at doing it in, their attitude to risk, the availability of funding, all that, to build as big a picture as possible, set them up with an account so we can be an option for them, and then within that client's individual time frame, we will monitor the markets. So for example, yesterday afternoon, despite what was happening in Westminster, the pound shot up to its highest level against the euro since May 23rd.
Okay, right.
Why? Because the biggest traded currency pair in the markets is euro to US dollar. That is the number one currency trade in the whole planet. And the euro is sinking to near parity levels for the first time in 20 years against the dollar. It fell to 101, so it's virtually at parity.
Gosh, right, okay.
For the first time since 2002. So the euro is under pressure. If the euro is under pressure against the dollar, you'll be under pressure against everything else. So by default, despite what was happening in Boris, the pound shot up in value. So I spent certainly all afternoon and into the evening phoning euro buying clients saying, despite all that's going on, we've got the best rates for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Would you like to go ahead? Would you like to wait? Do you want to stick? Do you want to twist? What do you want to do?
We need to talk, Tony, because I need to pay some bills, and I could have done with knowing that. I'm like you said, you wait until you think, oh gosh, because as lots of people know, we have a property in Croatia, so we're often paying bills over there as well. We always seem to be paying bills over there, but
Yeah.
And it is one of those things, you pay when you need it, but
right.
it's from a consumer's perspective, I guess it's having somebody like you who can make it a little bit more proactive and a little bit more efficient. So that's a great example. Yeah, interesting. So if we rewind,
sorry, go.
I was just going to say, if we rewind to when you were working in the City of London, and you're obviously working for big organisations, did at any point during that time you think, I really want my own business, or could see yourself working for yourself?
Since day one.
Yeah.
Since day one. And to be frank, I learned a lot. I was very lucky to have some really good mentors. My first ever boss, bless him, has long since passed away. He was when I was 19 years old. He was already a couple of years short of retirement. But he was brilliant and taught me so much. And one of the early lessons I learned, I remember, was I was basically his back carrier. Okay, I was a 19-year-old kid, and I was his back carrier. But he was tremendous fun and very, very knowledgeable. And one of the lessons he taught me, he didn't actually teach me, he taught me by example, in the sense that if this man had a modicum of political skill, he would have been a main board director of one of the big 4 UK banks that we both worked at the time. But he didn't. He said it as he saw it, and he made him wonderful fun. But politically, externally, he was very popular with the clients. He was very popular with his staff. But to climb the greasy poles of power,
isn't that so often the case, isn't it? It is that internal politics. And, I talk to lots of different business owners, and a lot of them have come out of corporate organizations. I call them corporate escapees. I was one myself. And, often people do say, loved the job, actually really enjoyed working, and the company themselves were great. They supported with the development, etc., etc. But internal politics just, people just find that incredibly draining, and it isn't their natural skill set. And often that is one of the top reasons that people cite for, I want to work for myself, or just move out of this environment. So it's interesting that you say that as one of the learnings.
Absolutely. I have many, many years. I mean, I have 35 years in the corporate world, and I have many, many years experience of seeing people that were really talented. The question as to who rose and who didn't, depending on where your talents lay. And the people that rose the most were the people who were excellent at internal politics.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Might not be much good at anything else, but they were really good at internal politics. And they climbed to the top, and the rest of us didn't.
Well, we've all got different. Yes, exactly. Yeah, let's keep it clean.
We'll leave it there.
Yeah, we'll move on. Swiftly move on then, Tony. So, so you said you'd always known you wanted your own business. At that point, had you an idea what that might be, or is it just at some point I want to work for myself?
Yeah, just the general. I want to work for myself. And I've had various offers throughout the times, and I took some of them up, but they didn't really work out, or the timing wasn't right. Certainly, so fast forward to Cosmos, the issue was that until the fintech sector took off in London, there was very, very high barriers to entry for somebody wanting to start up their own currency brokerage. Because for a number of reasons, most people's problems is getting the licensing,
right,
whether it be with the FCA or Bank of. The perverse situation I had is that what most people find difficulty, I've had since 1991. I've had a Bank of England license since 1991. The issue was that we moved to Cornwall to start a family in 2006. Love living in Cornwall, but what makes it lovely is that it's remote.
Right.
But where am I going to find a compliance officer 7 hours from London? And networking, you either met the same hardcore of people at the local FSB and chambers, or you spent half your lifetime going up and down the A30, where in non-holiday traffic it takes an hour and a half just to get to Exeter and the bottom of the M5, just for a couple of face-to-face meetings. And then the fintech sector took off. By 2019, London was just behind New York as the second biggest centre in the world. Started getting approaches from fintech firms to say, well, look, we can provide you with an alternative. You don't have to have your own staff. You don't have to have your own compliance. Go into partnership with us. We'll do the back end. What we don't have, you have, which is clients.
Right.
What we have, you don't have. So we'll work on a revenue share. So that eliminated half my problems. So we then launched. The lockdown came. We lost 90% of our revenue stream within 2 months of opening up, which is tough.
Yep.
But what made us survive, what helped us survive, was also completely tied into the lockdowns. For 3 things. One is, despite it being very unfashionable in the last 20 years, and increasingly so, I've always been blessed with having good relationships with clients who have been willing to follow me from job to job. So they've never had much issue following me to my own place. They, quite frankly, couldn't care less where I was.
No.
Because
I
provided the service. I provided the service. Then we started getting phone calls from clients along the lines of, and the 2 simplest examples I can share with yourself and the listeners, Louise, is private individuals, British, selling property on a continent because of Brexit. The lockdown comes, they can't go abroad to sign the contract of sale. They can get around that by giving their solicitors, the local solicitor, a power of attorney. So the solicitor does it, they sell the property, the solicitor collects the banker's draft, puts it into their Spanish or French account or whatever it happens to be. But they can't physically be there to go to the bank, to instruct the bank at the counter to move the funds to London. So now they're having to spend hours on the telephone from the UK to a bank on the continent trying to find somebody who speaks English. When they eventually get through that hurdle, the banks are not slow in the uptake. All of a sudden they get told that just to move your funds to a euro account in the UK is now being charged on a percentage basis, not a flat fee.
Oh, wow. Right. Yeah.
And I
That's a big
remember to
difference.
this
Yeah.
day, the first phone call I got was from clients selling a small apartment in Alicante in Spain. By the time everybody talked the taxes and estate agents' fees and all the rest of it off, it was a little over 100,000 euros. And the bank wanted 1,500 euros, 1.5%, just for the funds transfer. Could I do
Shocking.
anything about it?
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, I can, actually, because we have access to a client's account in Germany. That's still part of the same single market as Spain and France and Italy and Portugal and all the rest. So you register with Cosmos. We'll give you our euro account to pay into, but not the one in London, the one in Germany.
Right.
As long as you then have online access to your account in Spain, no more phone calls. You just go online, move the funds to Germany, we do the rest for you. That instantly saves you 1,500 euros just on the transfer fee.
Very nice.
And then, of course, the exchange rate's much better because I'm not in London, I don't have bank overheads, I'm then in Cornwall. So again, they win both ways. They win a saving of the transfer fee, plus a much better rate of exchange, plus a more personalised service. And the other example that happened to us was on the corporate side of things with people exporting. So I remember the phone calls from clients saying, my client in California or Florida or Texas or wherever they happen to be can't pay me. And you know, quite frankly, you start to laugh thinking, you're dealing with the biggest economy in the world.
Yeah.
They might not want to pay you because of cash flow, but that's a different story.
Exactly.
I'm telling you, they tell me they can't pay me. Okay, give me the number, I'll call them. So ring, speak to them. And to be fair, you had this ludicrous situation in the 21st century, British client exporting for years and years to the same clients in the United States. What that British client never realized is that when you ask an American client to send dollars abroad to a dollar account in London, can't use online banking. Only works within the United States.
Really? I know. I didn't know that. No.
Telephone banking doesn't exist. So the only way to do it is to print off a copy of the invoice, get in a car, drive to the bank, fill out a form, pay $50 for the bank to move the funds to a dollar account in London.
Right.
Problem was the banks were shut because of
Yeah.
lockdown. So now they really couldn't pay.
Isn't it interesting? There's so many situations where, you know, we kind of assume, don't we, with the amount of technology now, that everything is just so simple like that. And it's only when things go wrong that you realize you actually need that, and the amount of stress and anxiety that causes, which is so unnecessary. But it is the case that, particularly where money's concerned, you know, this is a very stressful time for people. So, yeah, those are two really great examples. And I mean, I don't export to America, so I suppose that I guess I've no clue about that. But it is interesting. You know, there must be so many different examples as well that you only find out when things go wrong. So that's when you do need that human contact, isn't it? And if you don't have a contact, you know, we've all been there. Being told by the phone that our call is important to the company, and they will get to us, but they're experiencing very high volumes of calls. And
yeah, we've all been there.
we have. So on a very different note, Cosmos. Now I know you're big into astronomy.
Yes.
So I'm thinking the two are linked, or I don't know. Tell us a bit about how you decided about Cosmos.
When I was putting the business together, I remember distinctly saying to my wife, well, I hope the name Cosmos is available, because if it isn't, I have absolutely no other idea what to call the business.
That's it. I'm not opening the business if it's not.
And it's in my mind for two reasons. First, I've had a lifelong interest in all things to do with space.
Right.
And secondly, the word cosmology is the definition of cosmology is different to the definition of astronomy. Astronomy is to do with the planets and the solar systems. The cosmology is to do with the universe. It's everything.
Ah, interesting.
And my love of all things to do with space is from my very earliest years. I was born in southern Africa, and because of the tilt of the Earth, the southern hemisphere points towards the middle of the Milky Way. We in the north point away from the Milky Way.
Right.
So even if you're lucky enough to get away in the UK to a dark sky area, like we are, we've got plenty in Cornwall and Devon and Dorset and sort of less built up areas, but you're still pointing away from the centre of the Milky Way. So for every one star we see in the north, there's a canopy of stars in the south. So I had a very patient godfather who, when we went camping and what have you, would sit me on top of the bonnet of the car with a blanket. Partly, I now understand on my parents' behest, because I've always been very curious as a person, and to stop me running off into the bush in the middle of Kruger National Park or something, they would
Kept you
kind of
contained a bit.
constrain me to the car. And then my godfather was very knowledgeable and humorous. Would very patiently explain, all the cosmos and the planets and the zodiac signs and everything else that all the other childish ideas that came out of my mouth. And I've had the interest ever since in anything to do with space and science and how things work. I'm all over that.
Yeah, that's great. And I love finding out about why companies are called what they're called. And some of it are very, very obvious, but I think that's a lovely background, and it's and ultimately, we are all connected, and it gives you that sort of greater perspective rather than just everything that's
Exactly.
very narrow to yourself. So I think that works very well. I'm very pleased it was available, because I don't know what you'd have gone for otherwise.
Absolutely. You'd have been. You choose then.
Yeah, go on, anything.
I'll have asked the algorithm to choose for me.
Yes, yes, you could have come up with anything. You never know with sometimes with autocorrect and spell check, you never know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could have ended up with
Yeah, that would have been very interesting.
So in the last couple of minutes then, it'd be really nice to hear about, if you've got any particular tips for people who are, looking to start their own business, or maybe they're new into business. I guess, have there been any key learnings in the last couple of years that you could share?
Yeah, always, every day's a school day. As far as I'm concerned, I love to learn. I'm particularly fond of a quote by Albert Einstein, who of course is one of my heroes, funnily enough, because of the science and relativity.
Yeah, makes sense.
But he said he's got plenty of them, but one of my favourite ones is, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them.
Yes, that's a great one. Yeah.
And that, I think, is so deep and meaningful. And I must put it this way, Louise. I must be one of the very, very, very few currency brokers in the world who relies 100% on repeat business and referrals. I mean, the whole industry has gone impersonal. The whole industry has gone transactional, technology only. So my competitors, spend tens of thousands of pounds a month on Google pay-per-click campaigns and the SEO rankings to be on the top half of page 1, and having business development teams and all that, and that's all great. But one of the things I spotted throughout my long 35-year career is that even working for merchant banks in the City of London, or brokers backed up by hedge funds in the City of London, so budget was never an issue, the best quality business was always referrals.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
So that's what we concentrate on. So as a deliberate policy, since day one of Cosmos, we are 100% reliant on referrals and repeat business. And I really like that, because when I'm speaking to a client for the first time, I can say to them, look, you hear everybody talks about customer service and the importance of it, and we've all been there. The only thing I'll ask you to think about is this. I'm 100% reliant on that, because I've got no other means of winning new business. So I'm not clairvoyant. I wish I was. It'd be very useful in my job.
It would be handy every now and again, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I'm not. But I will do my best to look after you. I'll do my best to get it as right as possible. Because if you just use me the once or don't use me at all, it's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I can win you and keep you, and then you kind enough to let me have a nice testimonial that I can put on the website, and you introduce me to A, B, and C, that's the only way Cosmos is going to grow.
Yes.
And some people would have thought that starting a business in 2020 was interesting timing. Starting a business deliberately limiting yourself to referrals is completely nuts.
Well,
and
it focuses
right.
the mind. Yeah.
But that's a different argument.
Yes,
but
that's a whole different discussion.
I'll take my tablets straight after this.
But no, you're absolutely
it does
right.
focus the mind.
Mm-hmm.
It does focus the mind. Certainly has mine.
And certainly, that real focus on delivering value at every stage and nurturing the client relationship. I think we can all take something from that. And certainly, the power of referral is enormous, and I think it's something that quite a lot of people kind of forget about. So, very good reminder for that. Right, we're out of time, so I'm going to have to say thank you so much, Tony. It's been really interesting to hear about your journey and the background to Cosmos, and that lovely story about you sitting on top of the car, gazing into the sky and looking at the planets. That's a lovely image. So thank you so much for sharing that. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. And if you've got any questions at all, just drop them in the comments, and we'll come back to them. And yeah. That's it from me. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care, everyone, and hopefully see you all soon. Bye for now.
Thank you very much for having me on.